So he can be biased for him, and I'll be biased against him.
All right, that seems fair.
Nice and neutral overall. All right, we are finally in game. Here we go. So I have not had any experience with Valhalla yet, but he is a level 24 player, so he does have quite a bit of experience playing this game by the look of it. And it looks like Cappuccino is going to be starting off on his green Feed the Forest list, and Valhalla is going to be on some sort of blue. It looks like a mono blue list.
Well, we don't know, right?
Well, we see that Aurora's Trick there, and the Aurora's Trick has a 5 lake requirement,
That's
which
true.
you don't normally see in dual colors.
Yeah, it must be. Yeah, you're right. I wasn't paying attention to the cards more than the colors. Well, Cappuccino is running green. Is this the green that he lost with?
I think it is, as a matter of fact. We'll see if he still has those famines in the deck, though. That was one of the big things that set his apart. He did tell me, I asked him afterwards, he did not actually have Ursus in that deck. So, at the very least, let's hope he added those.
Right? Well, we'll see. This is going to be interesting.
He's playing this a little bit slow. A lot of times with this sort of hand, you see the double Faeria on turn 2 to be able to get in closer to your opponent. But it looks like he's worried about overextending into this blue deck and getting blown up by Mirror Phantasms like we've seen in the past.
Well, this is going to be interesting. I mean, just in general, blue versus green, who would you think is the better?
Generally, I think that it favors blue, because green just has such a linear strategy, play a big creature and attack with it, whereas blue is kind of very good at getting around that, transforming those big creatures into something smaller, that sort of thing. And there we see those Aurora's Tricks coming into hand. This could be a pretty big blowout if he does manage to get up the lake requirement needed. But Valhalla does have a way off to that still. Otherwise, this opening would be taken immediately. It'd be interesting to see if there's something like Water Elemental in this deck to kind of help that production and get up to that 5 lake requirement a little bit sooner.
Yeah, he's playing straightforward actually with the green, and maybe that's what he needs to do, be just super aggressive. It's interesting.
Now we do see a lot of targets for this Mirror Phantasm, so he's likely to get a lot of value out of that thing coming up here. But we actually see the double Prairie this turn. It looks like he's going to try to value Faeria production over that.
And also, Mirror Phantasm and all these transformation cards that blue runs doesn't trigger last words, for those who doesn't know, which means that, if this Oakling gets transformed, then the effect of it's gone.
Yep, and we do see the Battletoads here, so just having even more fodder on the table for the green deck to deal with. And this is about the time when Cappuccino starts wishing that he had a Famine. He'd be able to take out 3 of these creatures this turn if he did. It looks like he's going to offer this Freedom Fighter instead. Now this Freedom Fighter will trade out for probably 2 of these creatures, so kind of even trading on the cards, except these Lore Thieves already drew some extra cards. But he's reconsidering it now. I think he might be considering playing some kind of buff and using the opening to trade into a frog instead.
He fed the forest.
Okay. So feed the forest on a damaged Oakling, not quite giving him as much Faeria as it could, but it looks like it's still going to be enough for what he wants to use it for.
The Ancient Boreas is now a 7/10 for 4, or like now, for 2. He plays faster than I can call it, but I was gonna say, like, it's still worth playing for 4, but if he can get something with 5 health on the board, it's crazy value at that point.
Absolutely, and one nice thing is that being able to play 2 creatures like this really plays around Mirror Phantasm pretty well. Because even if a Mirror Phantasm comes down, he can trade into both of them effectively. So great heads up by Cappuccino playing around that card. With these 2 Ruinous Commands in hand too, he might even think to play around Aurora's Trick. Just being able to buff his creatures out of the range of that powerful spell. Or, sorry, event.
Well, 2 Runing's Command on hand for Cappuccino, and Valhalla thinking hard.
Yeah, this is definitely a difficult turn for this blue deck, just from the problems that I've mentioned so far. Really, he would love something like an Aurora right now. Probably to set up for the play next turn. Because something like Ninja Toad into Aurora would be able to trade off for that Freedom Fighter and then deal a lot of damage to that 7/10. But unfortunately, he doesn't have anything like that. He has things like these Shifting Tides in hand, things that don't quite do what he needs them to right now.
Now it's move a land or draw a card. Both options good, but very situational. Blue do like to draw cards though.
Absolutely, especially with cards like these Gemsilk Fairies. You're able to play a fairy and then immediately use the Shifting Tides to draw a card, and hope to get an event so that you get the buff on that fairy.
Yeah. Once green gets the upper hand on the board with amount of creatures versus a blue, I do feel that's where it gets tough.
Right, it's a very snowbally matchup. You know, whichever side gets that early advantage really is kind of favored. Oh, but here we see a Beirut. Oh wow, okay.
How does that affect green though? How does Beirut affect green?
So it's going to be really hard for a green deck to come back if it's even or green being slightly behind on the board and a Beirut comes down. With this situation right here, Beirut isn't too strong because this board will just be able to trade into it pretty effectively. So in this situation, it's not very good, but in future matches, it could be a massive problem.
Production, guys, is what happens at the beginning of your turn. So when it's your turn, production happens, and what Beirut does is transform all adjacent lands into lakes. Doesn't create new land from what I know. I haven't played it much, but it does so. If he gets close to the forests here of Cappuccino, they will turn into lakes, which obviously can be a disaster when you can't play your cards because you don't have the land requirement or the place to put them down. Even the wrong placements.
Absolutely not the best to use against blue decks, but against mono green decks and that sort of thing, it can really take away a lot of control. And it looks like when Cappuccino is able to deal with that, Valhalla just goes ahead and concedes. So that'll be game one there to Cappuccino with his mono green deck. So this is a situation where I could definitely not fault either player for switching here. Cappuccino obviously showed that he's more than capable of playing this matchup, but Valhalla has to feel that he's favored with this mono blue deck against the mono green.
Because here's where I think Cappuccino... I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. I want to say that he might stick with the green because he won with it, so he can afford that another game with it because he feels confident, which is probably the case here. It looks exactly like that in Valhalla swap. But also the mind game, right? Because Valhalla did swap. Maybe he could have expected that. Maybe swapping to his strong suit, the yellow-red, would have been a very good, second weapon for him.
And I'm just going to point out, we do see this Famine in hand here, so it looks like it is going to be about the same build that he was playing yesterday. And it looks like he's against a mono-yellow, probably more of a controlling deck by the look of it. We saw a Deathwalker, that sort of thing, as well as these Last Nightmares. So it could be straight-up Sacrifice, or it could be just that more controlling deck.
It's going to be interesting, though, because it feels like he's now rushing. In case you did not see the 3 prairies go straight towards Cappuccino, in my world, in my opinion, that's usually the signature of a rush deck.
I can see why you would think that there, Scream. But one thing that these control decks do is if they don't have any good Faeria farmers or anything like that in hand, you really want to take control of the board and kind of act like a rush deck. Just get that land placement, so then if your opponent is playing a rush deck, you're not just sitting there defenseless while you don't have any plays. But it seems like Cappuccino definitely thinks this is a rush deck at this point. But we see with the Shaitan Vampire, it's at least a very mid-range version of this deck. And this Vampire is going to be a massive problem for Cappuccino to deal with.
Yeah, Shaitan Vampire. Creature drains 2 life from all adjacent enemy creatures. It's quite strong. It's a vampire. It's 2 creatures, and it's a 7/8, like we see here. That basically, these these willows are not much worth at this point, I would say.
Absolutely. Now, there's a chance he might want to buff one of them so it can take a hit from the vampire, but there's no real reason to do that this turn. He can play the buff next turn just as easily. It looks like that's what he's going to opt to do as well. So he does take out one of these willows, but Cappuccino is really going to just be trying to race here at this point. I'm not sure if that's going to work out for him, though. This vampire is going to be massive when it starts coming down.
The thing is this, though. The vampire is still stuck to have to deal with 3 creatures, right? Like, it has to deal with those. Though he has Last Nightmare, so he can remove it next turn to go for face. And that's obviously, I want to say obviously, or something that he might want to consider. Because it is now a race. And, this is... yellow is good at racing, basically.
It is. I think we're a lot more likely to see that last Nightmare come down on the 7/7 though. The Verdurant Force that just got dropped. That way it'll put him ahead in the race still, and it still gains a little bit more control of the board. All that Cappuccino will have left is that 4. And that is what we see happen.
And that is true.
If he hadn't dealt with that, then Valhalla would have been on a 2-turn clock, but here it's a 9-turn clock instead. A lot more time to be able to get some damage in. And it's actually not looking very good for Cappuccino here.
The pace of a yellow play like this, especially, you know, that land placement is so key. That desert, 2 tiles left of the opponent orb, with a Death Stalker. But, you know, just because any haste or anything you drop there, but usually you drop haste there and go face, they also gather Faeria. You always get that 1 Faeria discount, basically, for whatever you play there. You know, it's so high value. It's such an important placement. For anyone doing this type of plays.
Absolutely, and this Verdurant Force coming down was a very important draw here. That means that he'll be able to threaten the 2-turn clock still, but he's able to drop the Rune Shrine on the following turn, which will keep him from dying to these 2 creatures.
Yeah, we'll buy him a bit of time.
Actually, scratch that though, because with this Wind Soldier in hand, Valhalla will still be able to destroy the shrine and kill Cappuccino through it. So if Cappuccino thinks that'll be enough to defend him, he would be wrong here.
It has 8 health, though.
Yep, 8 health. The Deathwalker and a Wind Soldier coming in and attacking, and then the Shaden Vampire will be able to come in for the
One
kill.
thing I've experienced, though, is that even if a Rune Shrine has, say, 1 hit point, and you hit with a 7, it still mitigates all that damage. I mean, it's happened at one point at least. I'm not sure if that's been patched out, or if it's intended, or how it is, but I've seen it happen.
Yep, that's completely intended, I believe. But unfortunately, I just don't see a way for Cappuccino to pull this out. Now he still does have this 1 Wind Soldier in hand, so he's going to be able to attack with the Deathwalker and the Wind Soldier, and then kill with the Shaded Vampire. We'll just have to see if Valhalla sees it.
Oh yeah. You're right. One of these creatures, plus the Wind Soldier, does it. But he has, like you said, he has to see it. The lethal is there. Does he know it?
Now, a lot of people kind of tunnel vision at this point. They look at, just going towards their opponent's face. And he is able to do that if he creates another land up near Cappuccino, and that would work. But he doesn't even need to do that. He can just use the Wind Soldier to attack the Verdurant Force or something like that, and it would still be absorbed by the Shrine to destroy it. It looks like he's going to go with easy play and just attack face with everything here.
Now he saw it.
Yep.
Or he just did it in the right order. So that's 1-1 then. I'm calling it. I think we're gonna see Cappuccino swap to his yellow-red.
I don't think so. I think he's going to keep.
Wow, this was fast! Holy shit! Let's
Yeah,
not give me time to update the scores.
I'm pretty sure Cappuccino is going to be on this mono green deck here.
Wow. Against yellow again?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I think that was just kind of a bad draw for Cappuccino. I think that his deck offers a lot more than that, and I think the green deck really has the advantage in this matchup, especially with the Living Willows and that sort of thing. They can be really hard for this yellow deck to deal with. But unfortunately, that Vampire coming down and Cappuccino just playing into it was too much for him to handle. So I think we'll expect him to see. We'll expect to see him space out his creatures a little bit more here, and hopefully not play into that sort of thing.
I mean, considering how well Cappuccino did yesterday with his yellow-red, I'm surprised he doesn't play that in this match, but
From what I remember, he's always said that mono yellow is the worst matchup for that deck, unfortunately. It just gets in his face before he can get anything going.
So
that's
yeah,
why I would to see him to change into it.
That could definitely be the case. Well, if he said it, it's probably the case.
Well, it could be misremembering him as well. I'm not an expert on Cappuccino's mind, unfortunately.
You're not an expert on his mind.
Nope. Otherwise, I would be playing competitive, and
we need to get a doctor.
Get matched up against him.
Or rather, monks. Deathwalkers. So the monks are nice. Haste, whenever this creature attacks a god, draw a card. I mean, that's That's a lovely mechanic. Basically, that's just a love card of a lot of these yellow rush decks, or going face. Is obviously to have that in there for the free card draw, which is so much value.
Mm-hmm. Now we see the defensive Living Willow come down and an offensive Freedom Fighter. So this Living Willow will do a great job at holding off things like the Roger Monk from Valhalla here.
Mm-hmm.
But the Freedom Fighter will still be able to put on a pretty significant clock here. Right now he's considering whether or not he wants to buff it. Buffing it puts on a much faster clock, but it also plays in the Last Nightmare if that's what Valhalla has. And we do see the buff come in here. Luckily for him, Valhalla does not have any good removal spells for this, so it looks like Valhalla's not just not going to have much this turn. He's probably just going to have to pass. But that Dune Drake is a pretty decent draw here.
Well, he's sitting on 12 Faeria too. Like, what would the play be at this point?
He's probably just going to drop the Dune Drake in a somewhat offensive position. Just start chipping away with this Living Willow, I think. It's not an ideal play by any means, but he doesn't really have anything else. He needs to get something going. He's going to need a little bit of time to get through this Living Willow if he wants to be able to race.
But that's also the thing. I did play a lot of Yellow Rush, Face, Ninja, Assassin, whatever you want to call it, in previous patches. And, one thing I learned quickly after being coached a little bit by Shotgun and others was to just chill and just wait and just be patient. Just draw cards. Like, get your land placement right first. And because once you get that opening to the opponent's orb, you hit so hard. And if you have, this was said by another player in another game, but as long as you have one hit point left, you are alive and you can play. Like, that's a resource. So never get stressed by losing a bit of life in a game like this. It's as long as you can do what you need to do. But it is managing your life too as well.
Absolutely, and we do see that Cappuccino is doing what you suggested. Actually, he's kind of just dropping back his Willow. He's not worried about contesting the 6/5 or anything. He's just going to make it come to him, basically. And in the meantime, he's just hitting away with this 5/5.
Mm-hmm.
And back to Valhalla's last turn a little bit. He made a better play than what I saw. This Deathwalker coming down, it's going to be incredibly hard for the green deck to deal with. Even if he blows a lot of buffs and buffs up the Living Willow, it won't be able to trade profitably with the Deathwalker. It'll still just die to the Death Touch. So great play by Valhalla there.
Yeah, and he has more Deathwalker on hand, so he has the things he need to remove big, scary green creatures without too much loss of value. Basically none, I would say.
Absolutely, and I think next turn for Cappuccino, we're very likely to see this Rune and Shrine come down. Probably just to protect his 5/5 if nothing else. We can see that the Dune Drake plus the Soul Drain would be able to trade off with this Freedom Fighter, and that would just kind of take out any pressure that Cappuccino has. But instead, he actually just ruined a lethal.
Oh, wow.
Actually,
Lethal. GG.
Yep. Great play by Cappuccino, drawing there and drawing into exactly what he needed with that Freedom Fighter. Well played, and congratulations to Cappuccino for going 2-0 in the tournament so far.
There's two things here. First of all, I love seeing green play like this. I love seeing this almost rushing green type of thing, right? I also really enjoyed, like, one thing to note for a lot of people out there, the two creatures that, killed off his opponent was neutral cards. It was Freedom Fighters. Very good, very strong cards that you can splash in many different decks without any problems, basically. So that's also something worth noting, is that, while it's mono green, there's still a bit of those colorless cards that just makes it, that adds so much variety to the deck building, I think.
Yeah, I think Freedom Fighters are probably one of the most played neutral creatures at this point.
Mm-hmm.